Hey everybody, so I'm Michael, nice to meet you. So this is my second video that I've recorded. I had thought that in 2024 I'd maybe just start recording some videos that goes into how I process my images in black and white, what my thought processes are, the tools that I use, what I'm looking for, all of that kind of stuff. I figured it might be helpful to some people. Currently, and probably for the foreseeable future, I am living on the social platform Vero. It's a great community of people there. And a few people had asked me if I could just show them my own internal process for for processing black and white. So I thought I'd just record some videos. So that's what I'm going to do. I mentioned this on my first one, but I'm going to mention this again because I feel like it's important. I'm not a documentary photographer. I'm not a reportage photographer. So what I'm not doing in the purest sense is documenting what's in front of me. There may be elements which are distracting to the scene. And I have no problem whatsoever with removing those. I know some people do. I don't. I'm not a big fan of things like sky replacement, each to their own. But if there are elements that I simply couldn't get past and they are distracting, I have no issue with removing them. I'm not saying the way that I process black and white is the only way to do it. We all have our own style. And I will, depending on the image itself, I'll use different tools. I'll use things like DxO, Pure Raw 3, Silver Efex from the Nick Collection 6, I think it is now, and these days predominantly Lightroom. So let's get into it. So this is the scene as I shot it, and you'll notice that it's quite a light, high key image. There's lots of fog and mist around on the day. It was just a gorgeous morning. I almost didn't want to take photos, just stand there and enjoy it. But photographers have got to photograph stuff, so, so that's where we are. So so when I look at this is the image that has come straight in off the camera. So I haven't done anything to it. Depending on the detail of the image will depend on whether my first step is to take it into DxO's Pure Raw 3. If you're a Fujifilm shooter and you're working in Lightroom, you'll know that Lightroom doesn't really work that well with Fuji files. And so what DxO does, the Pure Raw 3, is it will take the raw image and it will sharpen it the way it should be, in my opinion. It sharpens it in a way that is much more pleasing than the more aggressive stance that Lightroom takes. Now you can fiddle around with Lightroom and create presets that sharpens and enhances the details in a much more gentle way. But really, in terms of a one-button process, I found that DxO Pure Raw does a much better job. So I've already done that with this image, and so I'm ready to start processing it. For this, I will probably use Silver Efex just because it gives me a few extra controls in terms of, for example, the color filter that I might want to apply, that kind of thing. But I need to make sure, first of all, that everything's balanced. It kind of is already. So I want to make sure that my blacks, my whites, my highlights, my shadows are all pretty balanced. And so that's probably the first thing that I'll do if I bring an image in and I start processing it. So for those who, I'm sure everybody is aware, but just in case, the control key on a Mac, and I think it might be Alt on a Windows, if you hold that in when you're dragging these four sliders, it will overlay a mask that shows you where the details are starting to clip. So let's start from top to bottom. So I'm going to check my highlights, and actually my highlight detail is fine. Let's try my shadows. Shadows are fine. I'm not imagining I need to do too much to this, to be honest. Right, so we're blowing those out slightly, so let's, and you can see up here, that turns white, so it shows that it's clipping, so we're going to bring that back a little bit. It's probably a little bit too much, actually. That's about right. And the blacks, see where we're going with that, so we're starting to lose some detail down there, although I'm not too worried about that, but I'm going to remove that anyway. So that's about right. That's cool. So for this image, just because I really want to clean up the scene, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this into Photoshop, because I can remove all of these blades of grass in Lightroom, but for some reason it doesn't seem to do as good of a job as it does in Photoshop. So I'm just going to edit this in Photoshop. My machine is not the fastest, so you may have to wait. Come on. Oh, not good. Okay, let's get rid of this. I will probably just use the spot healing. Oh my life. For some reason my hand is not working, so let's just get rid of these. And that. Spot healing is not always great, so you can see it's just left a little something there. I think that's all right. Zoom out. Yeah. That's all I want to do there. Okay, and so the next thing I want to do is I want to convert it into black and white. Now I can do this. I can do this in Lightroom. Lightroom is very good. Depending on the image will depend on whether I then go into something like Silver Efex, which is what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to edit this. I can never remember where I think it's in the filter, isn't it? Nick Collection 6 Silver Efex. So that's going to open up Silver Efex for me. Okay, we're off to the races. So you can see here that what it's done is it's just taken the tonal range of those colours and just converts it into black and white. So it's fairly flat at the moment, but we're going to change all of that. Let's get rid of that for a second. We don't need that. Normally when I come into Silver Efex, I'm looking at the colour filters. I'm going to see what each of the colour filters does. I know for a fact that when you're dealing with landscape scenes that have a lot of green in them, the blue filter can have a funky effect, which I quite like actually sometimes, but I'm going to go through these. Red is normally if you want to darken the sky. So we're currently in neutral, and we're just going to go through and see if anything changes, which not an awful lot is. There's a little bit of change here. And then watch what happens when I hit blue. It darkens things right down. If you're working in forests, then this would be almost black. So we are in here. I'm fine with that for the moment. So that's my starting point. I may strengthen it a little bit just because I want to start bringing out some of these layers and the trees. Okay. So then I'm looking at the brightness adjustment. So I'm going to start with my shadow. I'm going to darken my shadow down. Now I've processed another one of these photos already, so I know that this gets quite dark, so I don't want to attack it too harshly. Let's have a look at mid-tones. We're really just tweaking things a little bit. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so I'm gonna bring the highlights down a little bit, just because if you see around here, that darkens down, which is kind of what I want, because I want to show this distinction between the fog, the cloud here, and this section here. So I'm gonna, if I bring it up here, we lose a lot of that detail there, and a little bit of the definition of the cloud. So I'm just going to bring it down to about there. I'm happy with that. I may also then just increase the soft contrast a little bit, and what that does is if there's anything dark, it will darken it, anything light, it will lighten it. Okay, I'm kind of happy there. It may have a look at the structure. So Lightroom Capture One, you'll have things like clarity and texture, which is a global mid contrast increase or decrease. Where what I want is to split that out. I want to be able to control the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. So I'm going to just tweak these. So if you can see here, by increasing the structure of the highlights, you can see it's just having, I mean, I could go maximum there and it would look horrible. So I'm just going to bring it back, because for me, subtlety is the name of the game. I don't want things to look over processed. So this is nice. So midtones is darkening this, but also it's creating some definition in this section here. I could go crazy with it. We don't want that. But what it is doing is it's showing this layer down here. For me, that's a bit too much. So I'm going to pull it back a little bit. And I think about there is nice. Let's see what the shadows does. Right, shadows isn't doing an awful lot. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. And then what are we going to do? So the next thing I want to do is just bring in a selective adjustment here, probably more so over the trees here. I want to really make them stand out. So let's add a control point. Let's bring that's going to be horrible. So let's bring nope. So if we can't do anything there, let's have a look at the shadows. I'll bring the shadows down a little bit. I may just attack this in Lightroom in a second. I'm kind of fine with that. So let's add another control point up here, because I want to darken this down. So let us just take the highlights down a little bit. And this is not going to cover that whole space, so I'm just going to hold down my control key again and drag it. So it's just duplicating things here. I think I'm happy with that. The rest of this I will probably do on brushing. Excuse me. Okay. I'm kind of happy with that. I'm not going to do any more on that in Silver Efex. So I'm going to save that back into Photoshop. That brings it in as a smart object. Wait for that to do its thing. Okay. I'm not overly precious about keeping the layers, and I'm just going to save this, and this will save the Photoshop layer back to Lightroom. Okay, there. Okay, here we go. So, what can we do here? We can... Okay, so for me, when I'm processing, I'm constantly looking to see what can be tweaked. So what I might do is I might add a brush, and actually what I could do with any of this is I'm going to be burning. I'm going to be dodging and burning, but I'm going to burn first. There's a number of ways I could do this. I could either create a soft brush, bring down the shadows and the blacks. That would work. One or either, excuse me, would work. What I'm favouring on this, because we're dealing with cloud and fog and mist, those kind of atmospheric weather things, is I actually want to use dehaze. So here I'm just going to create a big brush, and I'm just going to dehaze very gently. There. I'm going to come down here, I'm going to paint all that in. There. Soft brush. And now I can just see what difference that makes. Now I kind of like that. It's making a distinction between the left side and the right side. So that's a lot of dehaze. If I wanted to go a little bit further, I may then bring down the blacks a little bit, just to add a little bit of punch into there. And then what that does also is it then draws the eye to these back layers here. Okay, so that's the first one. I'm going to create another mask brush, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use dehaze. Smaller brush. I want to bring this line out here. I want the eye to be drawn to that. Let's see how that's... That's good. And then I can just increase or decrease that. It's my phone. I don't want to go too mad with it. Again, I really dislike images that have clearly been over-processed. That's not where I'm at all, to be honest. I may do one more mask and do the same thing again. And just that there's a line here that I want to bring out just there. We're just talking small amounts, really. There we go. That's probably a bit too much, actually. Just about there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another mask, and I'm going to go the opposite way, because but here I like this. So not only am I going to lighten it by adding haze, but I'm going to add some clarity as well to bring some distinction and some detail in here. So I'm just gonna paint this in. My phone's going crazy today. It's not. I mean, 2 messages does not equal crazy. It does in my world. Right. So now I can just bring some of that in, lighten it a little bit. I'm quite happy with that. And then just one final mask. Again, back to dehaze. And I'm just going to darken this down a little bit. Not too much, just because I don't want it to go crazy. And I can mess with it a little bit. I may even lighten it and see how it goes. I think I'm kind of alright with that. I may even actually remove some clarity from it, but increase a little bit of texture. Now, talking about real world stuff here. A couple of things happen because of the atmospherics in life. First of all, things that are closer to you, the dark areas, things that are closer to you will normally be much darker than the dark areas as they get further away. So down here, it's going to be like anything that's black here will look black. I mean, this is still black over here, but because it's further away, it's going to get lighter and lighter. So that's the one thing I want to tackle, is just make sure that this is not too black, but it's sufficiently black to create that sense of depth from foreground to background in the image. And the other thing that happens is the closer things are to you, the more texture you see. Like this hill over here has loads of texture, I'm sure, but you can't see it, nor here. So what I want to do here is I just want to add a brush that adds in a little bit of texture. You're not going to see too much texture because this hill was a little bit further away, but I'm just going to add that. We're going to give the approximation of texture. I'm going to do that by adding clarity and texture up here for the moment, but I'll tweak it just in this corner here. I feel like Bob Ross. Happy little accidents. So what happens? I mean, you probably can't tell anything on this video. I'm just going to add a bit more in there. Now, for me, the only other thing that I would do is even though you think, why on earth would you do it on here? I'm just going to add just a tiny amount of darker vignetting, almost unnoticeable, but what it does do is it helps draw the eye into the center of the screen a little bit. So in terms of this image, I'm kind of done with it. My finishing touches normally is I will come over to color grading, to the global controls for shadow, highlights and midtones, and I may just bring these down. Normally on a dark scene I'll lighten them up, but on this scene, because it's quite a light scene, I'm going to darken them down a bit, and you can see what that's doing there. But I just want to attack it a little bit. And then the highlights, I want to bring them quite high, but not to the degree where I'm going to lose detail. And then midtones, I'm quite happy with that. I think the other trick is kind of knowing where to stop. I'm not always great at that. But I think for me, this carries enough of the feeling that I felt when I was watching this. unfold in front of me. A lot of this was kind of moving and kind of floating off these hills and down, and this section here was closer to me, and it was just passing this way. And I think I get that, so I'm happy with this. I'm not going to do anything more to it, but hopefully that helps. Do please leave some comments and just let me know if these are helpful, if there's anything in particular that you'd like to see instead, if there's any particular tools in Lightroom. I haven't really gone too deep into the actual tools, just because I assume that people will know how to use Lightroom or Capture One, whichever application you're using. There are plenty of videos by people much better than me at explaining these things, but this is just the thought process behind editing the photo. So I hope that helps, and maybe I'll do another one if anybody wants them. Thanks very much. Take care.